Welcome, everybody. Good morning. We are going to talk about interviewing today. And as a fellow boot camper, I was trying to figure out what would be a topic of interest for this group. And thinking about my own journey, I thought we could look at the power of first impressions during your interview. And so, as Cindy mentioned, I started my own journey a year ago where I decided to retire from corporate America. Really, I was egged by my husband who decided to retire. And I said, why not? It's time to kind of think about the third part of my life and figure out what I really wanted to do. So I started my practice in Mind Cultivator. And I am an organizational psychologist by trade. I also consider myself a culture and engagement strategist, and I've been leading the organizational development and talent development functions for the last 20 years internally to organizations. And I decided to retire to start this practice because I absolutely have a passion for partnering with leaders and teams, coaching them to be the best leaders that they can be, coaching the teams to develop to be the most effective teams that they can be. And it's really, I get to do my hobby every day now. And I love, just something personal about me, I love traveling around the world. And the reason why I decided to retire and have my own schedule. And I am the proud parent of Dookie, who's 13, and Butters, who's 22, who you can see the pictures there of my two kids, and we're just a happy family. So with that said, let's get going on today's session. What I would ask is that we hold questions until the end because there's a lot of content, and I've designed this process for you in hopes that it can help you really be prepared for interviews. So today, what I thought we could talk about is the importance of first impressions. It seems very common sense, but sometimes when we get really nervous or we're really excited about the interview we're going to have, we forget about that. So just a reminder there. Review some techniques to build rapport. And in the first couple of minutes, the key here is the first couple of minutes of an interview. And I've designed this model that I call the 4S model. It's a framework to help you answer that dreaded question of, tell me about yourself. And that's what we're going to work on towards the latter end of this this program. So Napoleon Hill, many of you probably know him, once said, people buy your personality and ideas long before they buy your product and services. And that's a really powerful quote because it really talks about the connectivity. It's about building that rapport. People are going to buy you before they buy your experience, right? The resume gets you the position, the interview, right? It's kind of dry. It's there. There's so much you can do with the resume. But once you're there, it's up to you to sell yourself. And I would imagine most of you are applying for senior leadership positions. So it's not necessarily about the technical part of what you do. It's really about, can you lead teams? And through my process in the boot camp, what I realized with my colleagues that we would share time together through our coffee dates, I started finding that the way that my colleagues led the interview was really about that resume and their technical skills, and they weren't landing jobs. And so I started doing a little coaching with my colleagues and really trying to focus them on really focusing on the people side of this process, right? Can you lead teams? We know you can do the job, and that's why you've gotten this far in your career, but can you lead the teams? And that's what today's about. So let's think through this. How you think and what you believe about yourself as a leader is going to come through in that interview automatically. So if you don't think as a leader, that's going to come through. Okay, and I want to make that very clear because that's what's going to set you up for success. And so if we think about an interview, the interview is only a moment in time, right? It's just a moment of time that you're just a few minutes that you have with somebody. And through that interview, your goal is to make a lasting impression. Whether it's good, it's going to be either good or bad, right? We've all had really crappy interviews and we're like, wow, what was I thinking, right? I wish I could do that again, or why did I say that, or why didn't I say this, right? You always have this inner critic in your head. And so, but if we lead with leadership, I think you're going to have a really positive outcome. So we have to be strategic. We just have to be very strategic. And as leaders, you guys are used to being strategic, right? So it's really about that lasting impression, which is really your personal brand. And so when we think about your personal brand, and many of you are very familiar with it, your brand, as Jeff Bezos tells us, is what people say about you when you leave the room. And so your personal brand becomes an intentional, powerful tool that encapsulates your unique skills and experiences and personality, because that's what you're selling. So when we're interviewing, we're salespeople. You're selling you, right? And what a great package to sell when you're selling you, right? And you got to believe that. And also what we need to understand that, unfortunately, your brand is not created by you, right? Let's think about that, right? The brand is created as the perception of your actions and behaviors create your brand. That perception is created by other people. Now we can influence our brand as much as we can during that time, because your brand can come alive during that time frame, right? But we can influence it, so we can be very mindful. And so in thinking about your brand, and today we're not going to talk about that whatsoever, right? But it's an important point to showcase when we're talking about interviewing. You have to find ways to really articulate your value proposition during an interview. So again, it's not about the technology. So some people may, if you're in IT and finance, some people may ask more technical questions, I should say, the hard skills, right? But typically it's can you lead the team? So you got to find ways to insert your value proposition, show your leadership style, and figure out how your brand aligns to the organizational values, right? And if you go with that you're stepping into these positions at a different level than a lot of candidates are there. If you don't know what your brand is, I would encourage you to do a quick exercise. And it's a simple exercise. It just find your closest 3 or 5 friends that you have, hopefully coworkers or ex-coworkers or just friends, and ask them to write 3 questions. Send you an email with 3 questions that describe you as a leader. And start getting all those answers, beam it out, and that's your personal brand. And then you're going to sit there with that data and you're going to say, I love it. I love what I'm hearing, so I'm going to continue to go that way. Or you hate it. And what's exciting about this is that you actually get to recalibrate, right? You have the power to reinvent yourself in every single interview. So if you didn't like the last one, you get to recalibrate and reinvent yourself again. And that gives you a lot of power. Being in this journey, I can tell you, when I went through a huge layoff. We laid off, over 200 leaders in one day. And so sometimes what you feel is like, oh my God, for the last X amount of years, I kicked butt and I've been a great performer and I've gotten A++ in my reviews, and now I find myself without a job. And that impacts your confidence level. You start thinking, what did I do wrong? Right? And that it gets you down to a level that you sometimes can't recover. And like I said earlier, that energy comes through an interview. So you got to pick up yourself. And I would encourage you to think about all the experiences that you had in the past, that you were really successful. Grab onto that energy and show up and sell yourself, because you're that good. Okay. So you have a lot of power, and we have to capitalize on that power when we are reinventing ourselves. And the way we do that is by really taking power of that first minute, right? So whether it's for a remote interview or face-to-face, as soon as you walk in, you have to set the tone, because creating that lasting impression starts from the first minute that you talk to the recruiter. And that could be through text, email, right? Or it could be any interaction you have. You're already setting your brand by the way that you respond to that communication. So I thought it might be useful to look at what research tells us about first impressions. Because I think it's really powerful. And I'm gonna need a little bit of help with this. So we're gonna play a little trivia, and I want you to use your chat as I share with you these statements. So these are some facts about first impressions. When someone meets you for the first time, a first impression is created in the first X to X seconds of one's interaction. Can anybody guess how many seconds that is? 10 seconds, 5 to 10, 3 to 5, 10 to 30, 0 to 60. Oh, I love these. 2 to 5. You guys are very, very close. So let's see what it is. So it's 7 to 17 seconds. That's huge. That's by the time you turn on your camera, you're walking and you took the seat, somebody already judged you, right? So it's really important to understand that. The second one, let's continue our trivia here, is in the first X to X seconds, a person's first impression of you wavers back and forth X amount of times. 30 to 60 and 3. Thank you, Steve. Anybody else? We got 0 to 15, 60 to 90 times 5, 0 to 3. Okay, 2. All right, well, let's see what it is. The first one is in the first 3 to 7 seconds, a person's first impression of you wavers back and forth 11 times. Can you believe that? 11 times. Right? So we have a great opportunity here to do something with that data. It is shocking, Bill. It is shocking. So a couple more stats for you, or interesting trivia for you. Your first impression is more important than your next 5 combined. Okay? So once you show up, that first impression is going to linger. That's your brand. Okay? Now, the next thing to look at is that 55% of a person's opinion in this is determined by physical appearance. And I'm going to say something about this in a second. So it's extremely important to show up groomed, prepared, put together, right? Even if you had a crappy day, you got to be able to play the part, right? And 93% of people's judgments of others are based on non-verbal input. So everything's through the eyes. So I wanted to share with you something really interesting, that the one feature that we have, a physical feature that we have that has these psychological powers, is a smile. Your smile is the only physical feature that comes with physical power, psychological powers. Okay? So a smile can help you feel more confident. It can help you build rapport right away with the person. I mean, if you're smiling, they're going to smile. It helps you leave a very good impression. It also boosts your happiness. It makes you be more curious and creative. And if you're more curious and creative, you're going to listen to what's not being said. And it's going to allow you to ask questions that are going to be more thoughtful, right? That's where it comes in. So remember that recruiter or that hiring manager that you're talking to is looking for those leadership traits. And a smile goes a long ways. And also, leadership has shifted through the years. We no longer want to hire authoritative leaders that don't get empathy, right? Emotional intelligence is big. And so how do you show that emotional intelligence? It starts with a smile, because you're building rapport. You want to be seen as approachable. Because what I'm thinking, if I'm trying to hire you, is the team going to want you? Right? So it's about leaving that memorable impression. Other things that they're going to ask about you. Are you someone to approach or avoid? Right? You all have interviewed at your level. You've all had interviews. And you had those people that had come and you're like, I would never hire them. You don't want to be part of that club, okay? Are you friendly and likable? Do you have presence and authority? Presence are meaning like, are you going to get eaten alive by this team if the team is a difficult team? or by your peers, right? And if you're in a senior leadership group of peers, right, there's some strong personalities and egos that come with that population of people. Are you going to be able to handle it? Are you trustworthy, confident, and confident? And are you the leader that we're looking for? So at the end of your interview, what you need to ask yourself is, are you that leader that they're going to hire? What impression are you leaving? So I would highly encourage you that after you have each interview, that you take a minute to reflect on what you feel you did well or not. Journal it. Because those thoughts the next day or that afternoon, have some time for some self-reflection and recalibration. It's going to make you a stronger interviewer. Okay. If you haven't worked on your brand, I highly encourage you to partner with a coach. Okay. Coaches are really good at this. They're going to help you. I see Bill has a coach. They're going to help you unblock you. They're going to help you take you to that next level. Coaching is about maximizing performance. Okay, so get with a coach if you can. Now, remember that the resume already got you the interview. Okay, so now we need to figure out how we're strategic, as we said before, with this interview with the person who's interviewing, so we can build rapport very quickly. Okay, and we have to seal the deal. This is you want that recruiter to be your salesperson. And if it's the hiring manager, you want the hiring manager to have absolutely no doubt that you're the person, because you want to outshine all the other candidates that they're interviewing. And that begins with rapport. Okay, so when we look at rapport, well, what is that? How will we start? We talked about a smile. So I wanted to share with you a few maybe techniques that you can try. I have level 1 and level 2. That's the way I made this. Okay, level 1 is the stuff you guys should already be doing. Like, this is basic. If you're not doing this list, please start doing this list. And you know, when we're trying to get these jobs, it's a little bit complex, because I'm telling you, well, you got to have a good personal brand. You got to build rapport. You got to use your smile. You got to showcase what you're good at, and it feels a lot, and it's overwhelming. But if you remember these pieces, I think it's going to make it easier. So always lead with a smile. Make sure that you're using the interviewer's name a couple times. It just shows respect. It shows that you're prepared, that you know who you're talking to. You know, it's just more engaging. Okay, open with a positive comment. And that can be something positive about the company, or just being grateful for the time, because that shows how humble you are for the opportunity. And that also shows emotional intelligence. Make sure that you maintain appropriate eye contact, especially through camera. You want to connect through the camera if you're doing it remotely, or that if you're in front of it. Just be mindful that if you're trying to achieve a position that's international, that you are conscious of what the cultural expectation is for eye contact. Make sure that you are nodding and showing engagement with the other person. It's not just don't sit in front of the camera. You got to be a little bit more, you know, engaged with the conversation, even if you're not saying anything. Mind your posture. You can't believe how many people I've interviewed in the past that they're like this, you know, they're like just there. The lights are down, they're off. You know, and you wonder if they even pay the electricity bill, because the light is not on, right? Make sure you're mindful of the lighting that's coming in. You really want to make sure that you're showing confidence and exuding confidence through this camera, if it's remote. Okay, be present, you guys. Being present is being extremely in tune with what's being said, and practicing active listening. Don't be too quick to figure out what you're going to say next, because that's not active listening. If you're being present, you are going to be able to hear what's not being said. And that, again, that's going to allow you to ask the questions, the insightful questions. And then be mindful of your camera. Okay, that's level 1. Level 2 is really for the next level leader. This is where you want to just be prepared, and you want to showcase that you are not here to play. You're here to get that role, that you are the right person. And the first thing is to showcase your unique value proposition. And if you don't know what it is working on it. It's about clearly articulating what sets you apart as a leader. So see, this is where the strategy comes in, because you got to find in that short amount of time how you fit this, weave this into the conversation naturally. So you have to know what that is. You got to do a little bit of work ahead of time. So this means sharing what experiences and achievements you've demonstrated in the past and how that's going to help the future. Okay. The next one is telling engaging stories. The more, don't just share your resume. Talk about an experience that is relevant to the future of this role. And when I mean tell a story, don't tell a long story. Nobody wants a long story, you guys, okay? It has to be short, to the point, and strategic, but engaging. But don't talk too much, because that's so off-putting that you won't get the job. I can tell you that right now, okay? The next thing is to display emotional intelligence through it, right? Being empathic, compassionate, what you're going to share about whatever struggles they're going through, right? That's another thing that you may want to consider doing. Ask insightful questions. At the end, I'm going to offer, for those that are interested, that want to connect with me, I have designed a workbook that has a bonus insight question, a bunch of insightful questions that you can ask during an interview. Because when they ask you, do you have any questions? Yes, you have questions, and they have to be insightful, okay? So that they can remember you. Remember, this is all about being memorable, right? And make sure that you're leveraging your remote environment. So beyond just being mindful of the camera, it's really about utilizing your body and the lighting and the sound and everything else that makes you sound so professional, okay? Make sure that you're following through with a thank you note at the end. You know, this is kind of basic, but believe it or not, a lot of times people don't. And just be authentic, be you. Don't try to be something you're not, because people will know. Remember about your experiences in interviewing others and apply that to your own journey, okay? So now during this interview, we build rapport, and now comes the time where you get asked the very dreaded, nerve-wracking question, tell me about yourself, okay? And what that is they're not asking, telling me about yourself. They're not asking, they don't care about your whole life. They're just asking, what value do you bring to the table? That's what that means. So you got to be prepared. You got to lead with confidence. So that's what we're going to work on in the rest of this workshop, is creating your script. And I want to lead with saying that we're going to try to get some sort of script done today, and it's going to sound very mechanical, and that's okay. You got to start there. Okay, and then you're going to make it your own, and you're going to work it and work it and work it until you got it down, and it's going to be just a quick snapshot of who you are. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working on today. And so this question is really about, should they hire you to lead their team? This is where we're going to be strategic, and we're going to find ways to incorporate our value proposition and everything else. Okay, and again, this does not mean your whole life story. Okay, this just means, what do you bring to the table? What's the value that you bring to the company? What problems can you solve for them? Right? It has to be quick, to the point, but you also have to be authentic. You can't be mechanical about this. That's why really practice makes perfect in this. So here's what I'm calling, I couldn't think of any other great name. So I'm calling this the 4S formula of tell me about yourself, right? And it has these 4 components. Number 1 is leading. When they ask you the questions, leading with success, right? Your key achievement. You got to put it into context, right? You got to share. This is the great opportunity to brag about yourself, but not in a bragging way, if you know what I mean. Okay. This is your chance to highlight significant successes you had in your career, and then grabbing onto that to share how that translate into leading teams. And you guys, I keep saying this, but this is about you showcasing that you can lead teams. Because if you're going for a director, vice president, or C-level suite, you're leading teams. That's what you're getting paid to do. All the technical skills you're already good at, and that's why you got the interview, like I said again, okay? So It's finding examples of what you've done, but connecting it to leading the teams. That's a success. And where you can grab a metric, something that measures your success, you grab it here. And I'm going to show you some examples, okay? The next part is you then transition into your strength. And this is about your unique leadership qualities. This is about your traits. This is what you're good at, right? And being able to say, my real strength is my ability to whatever it is. Okay, what I'm really good at or what I'm passionate about is fill in the blank, okay? And you're gonna have time to work on this. The next part of this is the situation. So this is what we call the leadership goals or the leadership achievement. This is where you talk about, you're looking towards this next role, but you're grabbing successes from the past to connect it to your future aspirations, right? So if you excelled in the past in developing a team, you might express the desire to take on a role that can build a team, right? So you're taking the past and moving to the future, right? That's the situation. And then lastly is the snapshot, which is something personal. Because sometimes we get so nervous or we get so uptight about the interview that we don't showcase our personality. And your personality is key to this. This is where you're still building rapport, right? You're sharing your success, your strength, the situation. You gotta wrap it up with something personal, right? This is a personal element. So on a personal level, I love to hike. On a personal level, I'm a pet parent. On a personal level, I love to cook and travel. And they get to know something because they might say, "Oh my God, where have you been to? You've been to Germany? I've been to Germany too. Oh my God, you have a dog. I have a dog too." So you start connecting on a personal level. Okay. So let me pause there because we're gonna get into the activity, and we won't have a lot of time. So is there any questions for clarification on what you're gonna do? Okay, good. Now, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna try this out. I would love to have somebody help me out by reading this example of tell me about yourself. This is for a position of a director of operations. So Tina, if you can unmute anybody who's might raise their hand, I can always call on somebody. Udo, you are so amazing. Thank you so much. If you could help me read through this.
Okay, first bullet point, success. In my recent role as Director of Operations, I spearheaded initiatives that led to a 25% improvement in operational efficiency. My focus was on integrating innovative processes and enhancing team productivity, which significantly reduced operational overheads. Secondly, strength. My key strength lies in holistic operational management. I have a knack for identifying areas for improvement and leading my team to implement effective solutions that ensures our operations that are not just streamlined, but also scalable for future growth. Thirdly, situation. I'm currently seeking a position where I can apply my operational experience and leadership skills in a new environment. I'm eager to join an organization where I can contribute to strategic development and lead toward operational excellence. And then lastly, a snapshot. Outside the office, and this is true, I'm an enthusiastic hiker. There's something about navigating through nature's diverse landscapes that really grounds me. Each hike is a lesson in resilience and adaptability, qualities that I find incredibly relevant and useful in tackling the day-to-day challenges of my operational role.
Thank you, Udo. So now, as he's reading it, and thank you, that was wonderful, you might say, well, that sounds really mechanical and I don't talk like that. That's okay. This is where we start. And then you start introducing your own language, right? Because this has to feel very, very natural for you. Okay? It's going to take a little bit of time, but it gives you a framework to be prepared and insert the things that you want to insert. Okay? We have one more example. And I'm gonna torture my very good friend, Steve Coleman, to read this because he reads really well. So Steve, could you read this for us?
Sure, Claudia, no problem. In my role of director of sales, I spearheaded our team's efforts to boost annual sales revenue by 20%. My focus was on refining our sales processes and broadening our market presence, leading to substantial improvements in customer acquisition and retention. My forte lies in strategic sales leadership and nurturing team growth. I believe in equipping our sales force with necessary tools and skills, creating an environment where innovation and goal-oriented strategies thrive. I'm currently seeking new opportunities to apply my sales leadership skills. I'm driven by the challenge of fostering growth in dynamic settings, and I'm eager to lead sales teams to surpass their targets and expectations. Outside of the office, sailing is my sanctuary. It's more than a hobby. It's where I find balance and clarity. The calm and focus I gain in the water are invaluable, especially, and I'm sorry, it's truncated on my screen here. Oh man,
Where are you
don't-
at?
I don't have the last sentence on my screen.
In the high energy world of sales, where quick strategic decisions are key.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so you see again, right? It starts flowing. It starts flowing, and it's gonna sound really natural. So what I want to do is take the next 5 minutes of quiet time, because this is more of a workshop. It's a hands-on. We're gonna do this together. Okay. So I would like you to start working on this. The one thing to keep in mind, okay, is to balance the story of I and we. And let me tell you what I mean by this. There's been too many times, and in my world of OD and talent development, I sit in the world of HR. And I can tell you how many times we bypass somebody because they used I too many times. I did this, I did that, and I did, and we know that at this level, it can't just be I, okay? And we've also bypassed people who use we too much. And the goal is to be inclusive. That's, the intentions are inclusive of leadership. Well, then what happens is we can't tell what you've done versus what your team has done. So then what people say about you when you're not in the room conversation becomes, well, did they really do anything? Because it sounds like their team did all of it. So finding the balance is very critical to this conversation, right? You want to highlight what you did, and you want to highlight where you led your team. Okay, it's a happy balance. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, if you can take a piece of paper, think about your situation. I'm going to go to the other slide really quick because I think it might be easier for you guys. This one. Okay, think about your success. What achievements have you had in the past? Now, this shouldn't be a difficult concept, because I would hope, and if you don't, I would change your resume. Your resume should highlight some achievements. And if you don't, make sure that you do that. Okay. So I'm going to stop talking. We're going to give you about 5 minutes to work on this. And then we're going to go into breakout groups, and we're going to share. And if you're stuck, have your peers help you. That's what that time is for. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes starting right now. Welcome back, everybody. So hopefully, now I know that this was very quick and not enough time for everybody. But what I'm going to encourage you is to connect with your peers and have a coffee date, and maybe continue to get feedback from each other on how it's sounding. Okay, like really support each other through this, because that's what we should do as a community. So Tina's going to select one team. Because of time, we're going to select one team to just give us some brief highlights, and then we're going to wrap it up.
All right, we had a room with Eric, Frank, Jennifer, and Lisa. Would you guys like to share?
Yeah, sure. I'll read mine. That's all we got to, actually, so why not? All right. I got to put it in front of me though. All right. So In my last role as the VP of Global Instructional Technology at KnowBe4, I led a team of content developers who building state-of-the-art e-learning courses. My role was twofold, as I was not only responsible for the 4 teams that built English content, but also for the localization of content for the entire company. My team successfully increased the English language titles by 10%, and on the localization side, we improved by over 300%, producing 3,200 non-English titles for revenue around $20 million in a year. I have an uncanny ability to spot process improvements as I did at KnowBe4, and then inspire the team to produce at levels they thought were impossible. I've been interviewing at various leadership roles in the learning services world and at learning companies such as yours for an L&D role. On a personal level, I love soccer and follow the U.S. men's national team religiously.
I love it. Everybody show some love, Frank. That was amazing. This is so great. And that's in 5 minutes. Okay. So again, I'm going to highly encourage you to get with each other, continue to work through it. And lastly, what I'll say is, just to wrap it up, is draft it and make it your own. Okay. Remember that you got to make it your own. You got to practice, practice, practice. It's going to be mechanical. It's going to be uncomfortable. Then you're going to start getting good at it. And then you're going to go to the next interview and you're going to make it even better. Take your time with it, practice, and don't forget to be authentic. Okay? Don't be mechanical. Be authentic. Be yourself. Let your personality shine through. That is what they're going to hire. They're going to hire you with confidence. Okay? That's what we're looking for. Lastly, just to wrap it up, I'm more than happy to connect with those that want to connect. If you're looking for somebody to coach you through this process, if you want to get some support, or if you want to get my full guide to what I'm calling the power of first impressions in an interview, I've set up a nice workbook with a lot of the things that we talked about, but even more items, more examples for you to use in your journey. More than happy to share that with you. Just send me an email to info@themindcultivator.com and I would be more than happy to connect. So I'm leaving 4 minutes just in case there's any questions or anything that Tina or Cindy would like to share. I just want to thank you for the time today. You guys have been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank
With
you.
the time left, why don't you just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question?
Well, I'll go ahead and ask. You know, in the third part of this process, you talk about what you see or want in your next opportunity. And in interviews that I've had lately, final interviews, right? There's what I don't know is this: when you walk into a job and you're interviewing, you don't know what they really necessarily want. And my fear is, how do you handle a situation where you want this scope, but the reality of it is that they want something just that small. It's not what they want to hear. That's the fear, if that makes sense.
Sure. And I think, Udo, you just have to be, when you go into the interview, it's all on the fly, right? You just don't know what you're going to be asked. The only thing I can tell you is the more prepared you are, the easier it makes, because you go in with your toolbox, and when they ask you the question, they're going to ask you just grab. So the more that you're prepared with your answers, it might be that you only get to share one component of the 4S, because that's all they want, and that's okay, but you're prepared, right? You're prepared to talk about achievements, to talk about your measurements, to talk about what you're good at, and it becomes so seamless, right? So if it makes sense not to share something personal because you got somebody that's super dry and could care less, right? Maybe you don't share that part, right? So I think being present is the key here, because it's going to help you figure out what that person wants. And one rapport technique that I do talk about in my workbook is the art of mirroring somebody, right? You're going to know if you get that dry recruiter that has 15 minutes for you, they're not going to want to hear your 4S. But be very strategic to figure out how you incorporate the key things that recruiter needs to know. Hopefully that helps.
No, it does. Good point.
Anybody else?
One quick question, Claudia. The metric you said to put in the success, but I almost feel like it belongs in the strength. Is that something that you recommend switching, or?
If it makes sense, if it makes sense for you and the flow, because what's key here is the flow of how you speak, right? And so if it makes sense to shift the metric somewhere else, I think that's okay. It's just what you write, and make sure you use words that in that you're not gonna get stuck with, and that it flows naturally to you. So if it makes sense to put it somewhere else, then sure. Remember, this is just the framework, so it's just to get you organized. Then you make whatever you want out of it.
Gracias.
De nada.
I don't have a question, but just wanted to say thank you, Claudia, for taking, the time and to be able to obviously go over this and being able to give us a whole bunch of insight on this.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome, Russell.
Mhm. Definitely.
Well, and as we come to the final minute, I know probably you have more questions, but Claudia has given you her information. Please reach out to her. On behalf of all of us at PRG, we want to say thank you. Thank you, Claudia, for all that you shared with us. And again, thank you to each and every one of you. This is our final coffee of 2023. So what a great way to round out the year with all of you, with all these great insights. We appreciate, as Tina said earlier, each and every one of you. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do to sustain and support us. We so appreciate you. And from the bottom of our hearts, we wish each and every one of you happy holidays. And we look forward to seeing all of you in the new year. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, happy
Thanks,
holidays.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Have a good
you.
rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.